What's good, it is Murdering. We're going to be doing a two-part series. Yes, two-part series, this video then the following video, so make sure you stay tuned for that on how to gear your champions, what are the best gear sets for your champions, regardless of where you're farming, pre-level 19 in the gear raid or post. We have a lot of information to go over here today, so let's get it. Alright, so we have a few different categories to go over here. We have marksmen, fighters, defenders, mages, and I guess healers. Yeah, we'll put healers in their own category. So this first video is going to be talking about the stats specifically you should aim for each type of champion. There are a few nuances and a few champions where you have to really read their kits to make sure you're fully understanding what they do. Also, keep in mind this is going to be a basic and general guideline for all champions. So depending on what content you're doing, this can vary a little bit, so understand what I'm saying, but don't take it word for word because I will distinguish what is good and bad. But again, it's important not to just jump down someone's throat if they do disagree with you, because they could be right in a very niche situation. So the first thing we're going to talk about is more of the early game side, and this is going to be something I saw when I started playing, so I wanted to tell all of you this because I pretty much disagree with this strategy wholeheartedly. What am I talking about? This bangle piece. The bangle refers to the top right ring, separate from the, I guess, just normal ring in the bottom here. So we're talking about the bangle. Now, when I was first starting, it was recommended that I used a crit rate bangle for the epic gear, the blue gear, the legendary gear, the early on gear sets, because you're lacking crit rate. Now, with that being said, and like I kind of just explained, I don't agree with that. After going through the game and seeing what the early game was like, you might be thinking, Murder, you're level 89. You haven't been playing for that long. I think, wherever my days are, it hasn't been that long. So you wailed through. I would challenge that because I also have a free-to-play. It's level 22. I did get lucky. I got Venema, of course. But the point is, after doing the free-to-play and this account, so pretty much going through early game twice so far, I do not rate crit rate on the bangle high at all. And I'm going to explain why here. So let's go ahead and search for a main stat crit rate. I know I have some. Okay, so we're getting 66% crit rate on a main stat. Now, if we wanted to do like a plus 12, it's going to be slightly below 39% because I'm pretty sure Mythic gives you a higher percent chance than a Legendary. And ideally, I think a lot of people recommend that when you're in Legendary gear, you want to go for crit rate. So let's take 30% here. The reason why I don't recommend any crit rate on the bangle, because you're missing so much main stat. You really are. And main stat is so much better, meaning if they're attack-based champion, which is most champions in this game that deal damage, their main stat is going to be attack here. This game scales incredibly well because it's attack minus defense for the damage formula. So the more attack you have, the more damage you're going to do. Now, crit damage does not scale that way at all. In fact, crit damage is the best in Guild Boss. In pretty much all other content, they have incredibly high defensive values, skyrocketing the value of attack everywhere outside of Clan Boss, because Clan Boss, I keep calling it Clan Boss, I should refer to it as the Guild Boss. Their defense is low, even all the way up to Nightmare 4. So, with that being said, if you calculate using something like an attack percent bangle over a crit rate, and let's say we get 12% crit rate on every single other piece. We have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, plus another 10, that's 60% crit rate with pretty terrible secondary stats of 12% each on average. So now we have a full attack build. We have way higher attack than we would have if we went for a crit rate ring, and 60% total crit rate on your character. Why this is a good idea over trying to go for 100% crit rate. If you use a bangle, the first things first, you're going to overcap crit rate. Getting that much on one piece and trying to avoid it on every other piece is not going to be easy because of how frequent the drop chance is for a crit rate to be a substat on every other piece. So that's the first thing. Anything over 100% is going to be a wasted stat. In this game, you do not want to waste a single stat. So that's going to be the first point. The second point is you do not waste any energy in this game by failing a run. What does that mean? If you are hard stuck on progression, it's better to have 60% crit rate and fish for that perfect scenario where you have enough damage to kill whatever wave you're on, then having more than enough crit rate, but your base attack is too low to deal enough damage. You would rather be in the first situation because you have unlimited retries as long as you have enough energy to do the stage once. So that is my pretty much logic behind why you never want crit rate at any point in this game on a bangle here, because 100% is good, but even my endgame builds, while they're not perfect, I'm still getting very high results by improving my attack by over 1,000, crit damage by about 40%, and dropping to 92% crit rate. I do this on quite a few champions, and I have tested the viability of 100% crit rate compared to this, and the fact that you can retry without consequence is just, we cannot overlook that, and we should use that to our advantage. You will skyrocket your progression. So that is the long rant about crit rate, and that's going to be a pretty solid core part of this video here. Next, we're going to talk about fighters. Now for fighters, another stat that I should mention for the early game and fighters specifically is attack speed is highly underrated. People are avoiding attack speed, saying it's okay, but it's not that good. This is why early game attack speed is incredible. If you look at your attack interval here, this is directly affected by attack speed. So early on into the game, a very small amount of attack speed will reduce your interval by a lot. Once you get into more endgame, and we go to someone like my Silas that has 410 attack speed, it's going to take me, I believe, 80 attack speed to reduce my interval by 0.1 seconds. Whereas 80 attack speed added to the baseline 100 is probably going to reduce it by 0.3 or 0.4 seconds. It sounds very small, but the gain from attack speed early on is massive. So main stat, attack percent, and attack speed are my two highly recommended stats for anyone that's early game. Granted, your champion does in fact scale off of attack speed, and if it doesn't, it will say cannot scale with attack speed. That's going to be pretty self-explanatory. So for fighters, this is going to be pretty generic, and it's going to be the same for marksmen. So fighter and marksman, you want a decent balance of attack, crit rate, crit damage, and attack speed if it applies to the champion. So that one's pretty simple. We got through the main two damage dealer types being marksmen and fighters. Very strong, of course. There can be some argument for a champion like Salazar. Thankfully, I just clicked on him or I would have had no gear. So Salazar applies a bleed, which means there's a higher emphasis on attack speed over the other stats, and you have to keep your eye on the base stats we see here. So Salazar has 6.8 thousand attack as a baseline. Now let's compare this to an arrogance. Where is he? Right here. That has 5.2 thousand base attack. So attack's going to have a greater yield on someone like a Salazar over arrogance. What are we talking about? It's very easy to hit 17,000 attack on this guy with 1, 2, triple crit damage. 17,000 attack, just under 18,000 attack on a triple crit damage character is pretty insane. Now let's move over to arrogance, who has 1, 2, he also has triple crit damage, and his attack is 2,000 lower. This is directly swayed by the base attack. Of course, the rolls are going to be a bit different across the gear. He is wearing the Warlord set, which gives plus 25% attack, and my Salazar is wearing pretty much the same thing, except for we're getting a less base attack from our weapon here. So that is very important to keep in mind. I'm going to talk about Calypso briefly, and this is going to let you kind of think about the character you're thinking about building here. Someone like Calypso, again, kind of like Salazar, where you do want attack speed, because a lot of her damage comes from the Seal Stone that she summons. So like this little artifact above her that starts attacking each time she hits her rage cap. She adds another Seal Stone up to 4, 5 if you ever awaken 5. I do not, unfortunately, but this is going to give her higher value from attack speed. It's going to generate more rage. In return, it's going to have all of her Seal Stones attacking faster, and you're going to get all 4 of them much quicker. The next important one to talk about is going to be a mage. For the mage, we're going to talk about morrigan because we just had a morrigan event here. So for mages, it's a little bit different. Mages, you want to full send all of your focus on attack percent. Attack percent, attack percent. That is going to be king because of how magic resistance works. You really want to increase your base and raw damage that you're dealing to enemies with magic based champions as much as possible because their base attack is fairly standard low. So with that, we can see I'm just going full attack. I believe I have triple attack here. Yeah, so triple attack is going to be the best on the right side you can always get for sure here. After that, attack speed and crit rate, those are going to be the three main focuses for pretty much anyone that's focusing on a mage here. And whatever crit damage you can get, perfectly fine. You'll see this more in the next video talking about the gear sets, and it will kind of make more sense as to why you don't have to focus too much on crit damage. Now this makes mages one of the easiest classes to kind of gear because there are a lot of mages who do not scale with attack speed at all. Enter Vierna. Now my Vierna is not geared properly because I'm trying to inflate her BP so I can complete the next level of the tide, but I have plus 415 attack speed, giving me 515 total. Attack speed does not work on a champion like Vierna here. As we can see, attack speed bonuses do not affect basic attack. So like I said, this is not for me to use. This is strictly for the tide, and I'm wearing an attack speed necklace here. I would be wearing triple attack just like Morrigan, which is why I chose to show her first here. As far as artifacts, this isn't really an artifact guide. We can get into that later, but Tear of Starlight is of course going to be the best because what does it do? It boosts attack. So we talked about mages, we talked about fighters, we talked about marksmen. The next type of champion we're going to discuss is going to be healers. Healers, again, I think can be misinterpreted. In my opinion, healers have the lowest priority for your gear. Gear rate 2 is like the worst gear rate to farm. A lot of people farm it because it's the easiest to complete. Once you get Volka and then Volka A1 from the tide, it makes it significantly easier with the recall strategy. So I've probably only farmed gear rate 2 100 or less times on my entire account since I've been playing here, and I've farmed thousands of gear rate 1 and thousands of gear rate 3. Just to put things into perspective. Now, of course, now that I'm kind of comfortable and closer with having pretty above average gear from gear rate 3 and gear rate 1, I will then head back to gear rate 2, which is probably in the next couple weeks, to finish that off here. So for pretty much all healers, you want the invigoration set. Again, we're going to go over that in the next video, but it's important for healers that you look at what their healing is based off of. Some of them are based off of attack, some of them are based off of HP. Vortex is one of the best healers in the game. I know that's hard to say with someone like Eowyn that has that wood spirit that you can place globally. I get it. But Vortex's range is insane and he scales off of HP, making him incredibly tanky. Now, as far as specific stats for healer, you're going to want to stack the main stat that's based on the healing. So as I mentioned, HP based for Vortex, attack percent for champions like Dolores, who isn't really a healer, she's more of a support champion. Eowyn is attack based as well, so on and so forth. The next important stat for a healing focus is going to be not healing effect. Going to be attack speed. The faster your attack speed, the faster you're going to heal your allies. That's very important. I don't think it's talked about enough because there are a few champions like Dolores where can't upgrade basic attack, meaning attack speed here. So I think people see that and just assume it applies to all healers. That is not the case. You will notice a significant jump in your healing output if you do increase the attack speed. So with that being said, after you get the base stat, attack speed, this is when you're going to focus on healing effect. Now I found the best healing effect number to be between 50 and 70, despite what I think the official Discord released something saying you want like 100 and something based on the stats you can get. Again, it's really easy to make and build healers properly. We can just take a quick look at my gear here. Double blue, 4 blue rolls, 4 blue rolls, 4 blue, you kind of get the point. I've cleared all content with this Vortex. Nightmare Void Rift, 121, 221, 321, anywhere I needed a healer, this champion and these stats, as bad and low as they seem, it was enough to get it done. So heavy emphasis on, you don't have to put too much stress on gearing your healers. You can kind of ignore them unless you're specifically noticing they're not pulling through. Skill points, however, have a huge impact on healers. They do have an impact on all heroes, but I would say healers specifically, they can make or break a healer for sure. So really quickly, just taking a look at my Eloin here, who's actually built the reverse on how you would want to build a healer. And I have this for a specific reason for a guild boss. You want to be stacking attack. I think I originally had 20-something thousand attacks, so she was healing like crazy. I have the high attack speed here, but I kind of gave her damage stats and built as low attack bonus as possible because I don't want her to heal in the guild boss because I'm using the champion Valeria, who you want low health on. But for a normal attack-based healer, we're going to be using triple attack bonus accessories here. If I had an HP, I would be using HP to lower my healing output here, but again, that's not the point of how you're supposed to gear these healers if you do want to get the maximum healing out of them. And as good as healing effect is claimed to be, like I said, it doesn't take much to get a healer going in this game, so don't kill yourself to try and get crazy amounts of healing effect because it has diminishing returns for sure, mostly past 70, and it's much easier to stack the base effect of the healing, so attack base healing for Eloin and attack speed also paired with healing effect at the end here. The last type of champion we're going to talk about is going to be defenders. Now my defenders are mediocre. Again, this is another type of champion that are similar to healers, but they don't require a ton of gear. Now the first defender wall you're going to hit is artifact raid 18. That's when, to survive the Salazar, you need someone like an Olog that's pretty damn tanky. So stats like this, focusing on HP, do not disregard defense ever. I see people saying defense is a bad stat. That's wrong. If you have defense on your character, it will reduce the damage you take significantly because it's the same thing as the damage formula. It's going to take the boss you're fighting or the enemy you're fighting's attack and subtract it by your defense, and it's going to give you the number that they hit you for. So outside of Olog, who has incredible self-sustain with his shield, the best example of defense is going to be Regulus. Regulus has a very high base defense. He has almost 1,000 more than Olog here. So my defense is low, but I've seen plus 4,000, plus 5,000 defense and a ton of health on a Regulus. In the Regulus that I've seen, they're getting hit for like 400 damage each. Just think about that for a second. You can stack HP as much as you want and get hit for 30,000, or you can stack a healthy balance of defense and HP, and you can get hit for a couple hundred. I think the winner is quite clear here. So again, to reiterate my point, champions that don't have a self-applying shield like Olog here, defense is going to be very high value. Even for someone like an Olog, you don't want to completely ignore defense, but you definitely want HP on the main stat wherever you can get it. I don't have an HP Guardian set ring, so I am using defense percent, and I was still able to clear all content easily with this Olog. Outside of that, the only, I guess, special defender that's worth talking about is going to be the special event, Captain Reeve. Captain Reeve's interesting because while he's a tank and his main purpose is to be able to, I guess, sustain and outlast, you want to give him a decent amount of damage. The reason why is because of this passive right here, Abyssal Envoy. When attacking enemy targets under control, it restores 4% of max HP. So what does this do? This increases your value of attack speed significantly. And an easy thing to do with a champion like this is, and this makes him a little bit harder to gear, I would say he's arguably the hardest tank to perfectly gear because you want HP, defense, attack speed, crit rate, and healing effect. You want all of it. You want all of the things. So this is definitely one of the hardest champions in the game to gear, in my opinion at least. But you can pick and choose where you want to cut back on based on the type of build you're going for. If he's tanking non-threatening mobs, but a lot of them, obviously you want to build more into attack, crit rate, attack speed. If he's tanking hard-hitting mobs, again, more obviously stacking into HP, defense, attack speed, and then finally crit rate if you can, not focusing too much on your attack roll. So this is a lot of information to kind of unpack for sure. The main thing to take away from all of this in the end is going to be read your champion skills. I cannot emphasize this enough here. I don't think people do it enough. They just go straight into looking for guides on champions. They're told, use this gear set, use these stats, and they're not really learning about the game. If you read each and every single skill of every single champion before you start gearing them, and before you start using them, your placements are going to be better, your strategies are going to be better for clearing, and you won't be so dependent on videos that are using maybe only 2 champions that you have and then up to 6 champions you do not have, and then you're frustrated, you can't figure it out. Read the skills. It's important to note everything from the talent to any promotional upgrades the champion gets, from the basic attributes. All of these things matter into helping you develop a strategy, because this game is 100% knowledge-based strategy game. So with these tips to gearing and stats to focus on, you should be much better off going forward. And again, the second video following this is going to be focused on the gear sets you want for each type of champion to kind of round this up so this video isn't any longer than it has to be. With that being said, if you enjoyed this content, smash that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next upload.